Hello again, everyone. This is a video response to the questions for the Missing Link film study. And let me say off the top that it might seem a little bit strange that I asked you guys to watch a video about how very wrong we got some information at one time. That anthropologists were fooled by a hoax, and we were completely off base for some years on it. To me, that's not actually a bad thing. It's a great thing. It's a demonstration that we as scientists continue to progress, we continue to study, we continue to try to do better than we have done in the past. That just because we accept something as fact today does not mean that we are not going to continue to gather data about it, that we're not going to continue to go back and check it, that we're not going to continue to question that knowledge. That's the power of science. That's the power of anthropology, is that we are not going to say, well, we figured that out. No one ever needs to look at it again. We have a pretty good handle on that. Yep, just case closed. Everybody can retire now. That's not how it works, right? So that's why I have you watch this to understand how we get better in time, right? So to jump into it, in 1912, this skull fragment was found near Piltdown. It was found by Charles Dawson, 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 right? And its original nickname, which is what everybody knows it by now, is Piltdown Man, right? Early researchers were looking for this, which they thought would partly resemble a ape and partly resemble a human, and that the answer is the missing link, right? To number three, they thought that they were going to find this missing link that is exactly halfway between humans and apes, right? And of course, they didn't, because why? As they say, because that's not how evolution works. It's not puzzle pieces which are distinctive from one another. It's not a chain. That's what they even said, the missing link, like a link in a chain, so that chains are separate from one another and one connects to the other, connects to the other. It's not like that. Instead, you're going to have parts of a population in one area that maybe evolve in different ways, evolve in new traits. They're going to breed with a population in another area that has evolved a few other traits, minor traits, eye color, hair color, something like that, minor variation on a gene. And then you're going to have an admixture of those two populations coming together. You're going to see these gradual shifts over time. You're going to see incremental things. You're also going to see those punctuated equilibrium, big giant steps that we talked about before. But you're also going to see a lot of gradualness. So it's not going to be links in a chain like we talked about with the cladograms. It's much more complex than that. Okay, it's not a line where A becomes B, B becomes C, right? A becomes B, C, D, E, F, G, and then G and B and C and A hook up, and just, all of this is flowing back and forth all of the time, right? It's much more complex than that. So there is no missing link, because that's not how evolution works, right? And that linear thing that I was talking about, that links in a chain, that showed this kind of march of progress where evolution is supposed to be goal driven. Evolution sat down one day and is like, what we ought to do? We ought to evolve to be bipedal. That's not how it works. We call that orthogenesis, which is Orthogenesis. I'm shitty at spelling, I apologize. But orthogenesis, right? Which is how we kind of thought about that before. Peking Man and Java Man were both early forms of Homo erectus, right? Many of you emailed me about this question, right? In 1924, Blank found this species in Tong, South Africa, and nicknamed the species the Tong Child. Many of you pointed out, they were like, yeah, the limestone workers found it. You're completely right. I didn't mean to take credit away from the working class there. It was limestone workers that found it, but who I was trying to look for is Raymond Dart. They then gave it to a scientist named Raymond Dart, D-A-R-T, but it was found by limestone workers. Many of you were right in emailing me about that. And again, it was kind of noted in the video that, like, we weren't really looking in Africa. Well, we weren't looking in Africa because this is all white Europeans that are doing this research. And if you think that white Europeans in the late 1800s and early 1900s were even remotely willing to consider the idea that they had evolved from African populations, Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Just straight up racism prevented them from even considering it, even though a lot of scientists were saying, like, look, everything that morphologically resembles us in any major way, chimps, bonobos, gorillas, is found in Africa. It makes sense that it would come there. There was only one or two scholars. Even most scholars were like, yeah, but no. And so Raymond Dart was kind of a revolutionary because he let guys like those limestone workers know, like, hey, I'm always on the lookout for fossils. You find them, and I'll pay you for them. And he did. And he was one of the early guys who was able to say, hey, you know, there's evidence that we evolved in Africa, which again was a real kick in the teeth for a lot of Europeans, right? But it started to lead to this evolutionary model that's often shown as sort of a tree where there's sort of the main trunk and it goes branching off and everything. That's called phylogeneity or phylogeny, Phylogeney, phylogeny. Yeah, phylogeny. I think I mispronounced it a second ago. Phylogeny, or phylogenetical tree or things like that, right? But this is again this idea that I've shown you pictures of that before in this class. You probably still run into it in your biology book. It's not a great example of it. It's not a great way to think about it, right? But nonetheless, so why was this an improvement, right? It's an improvement because it acknowledged a number of things that not every um, fossil form that we found was going to be our ancestor. Again, A does not become B, does not become C, does not become D. Sometimes A becomes B and C, B dies out, C keeps going, right? Not everything's related to us. There are evolutionary dead ends that go no place. There are also the reality of this, why it was an improvement, is it shows that these things can overlap. Because this is like, the people that say, oh, well, if we, evolved from monkeys, we didn't evolve from monkeys, we share an ancestor with monkeys, but be that as it may, or if we evolved from monkeys, we evolved from chimps, why are they still here, right? Because species are going to overlap. Homo erectus and Homo habilis and Homo sapien later, and then Homo neanderthal and stuff. Many of these groups were walking around Earth at the same time because they evolved in different regions and they were cohabiting areas at the same time. So we've got some overlap in terms of time. Today, we have also abandoned this and we use what is now called the braided stream model, as a bunch of leaves fall on me here, sorry. What we call the braided stream model, which is, instead of a tree, it's a stream, right? And it branches and it comes back. I had said before, right? A does not become B, which becomes C, which becomes D. That doesn't work. And so at first they said, well, A can become B and C, but B dies out and C continues on. The braided stream model recognizes species A can become species B and C, and sometimes B and C will come back together into D, right? These different lineages with shared genes result in hybridization, which we talked about, right? This highlights the importance of the evolutionary mechanism of gene flow, right? So we interbred with denosavants, we interbred with um, Neanderthals. So it shows some of this real complexity that's out there, right? And hybridization does tend to lead to larger species, more robust species. We talked about this with things like the liger, and you've read about some of this, right? And is there clear evidence of this in humans? Absolutely, there is, right? There's a jawbone that's only 40,000 years old that we found that has both human and Neanderthal ancestry in DNA. And it's a pretty robust species. This I think it was a female, right? Which was confirmed through DNA. And so 40,000 years ago sounds like a really long time, but remember, when you're talking about evolutionary process, that was yesterday. That's absolutely nothing. That's absolutely nothing, right? So yeah. So as I said, one of the things that I like about this video is it demonstrates science, but it also demonstrates the way that science is not a emotionless, sort of always objective thing. The questions that we ask and how we ask them are shaped by culture, politics, belief, you know, all of these other things that we think have no place in science, but the truth is are shaped by science. You know, when Neanderthals were found in the late 1800s, Englishmen were really, really pissed off about the fact that that Germans could claim that they were sort of the original people compared to Englishmen. That is what led to this Piltdown Man hoax, and it's what led so many scientists to say, yes, finally, exactly, this is it, we have the evidence, when there was already evidence sitting there that all of us come from Africa, but the racism of the day prevented them from even remotely considering that fact, right? So no, all human beings are biased a little bit, and since human beings are the ones that are creating scientific knowledge, science is going to have some bias to it, and that's an important thing to consider and to remember. Okay. Well, thank you guys very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.